Buckingham Palace attracts tourists from all over the world, eager to witness the legendary discipline of the royal guards, men who stand frozen in place, unflinching, unshaken, and completely impervious to distraction. But one American tourist, Brandon Carter, had a different theory. Dude, they're not robots. They're just guys in hats. I bet I can break one. His brilliant idea? A staring contest. Brandon believed that if he got close enough, made enough ridiculous faces, and held eye contact long enough, the guard would crack. He would win. But what he didn't know, the king's guard doesn't lose. And before the day was over, Brandon would be on his knees begging for this to end. Because when the royal guard finally reacted, it wasn't with a laugh. Buckingham Palace stood majestically under the gray London sky, its golden gates gleaming in the daylight. Hundreds of tourists lined up along the barricades, snapping pictures, whispering in awe at the legendary royal guards who stood like statues, unmoving, unshaken, unbothered. But one man, one very overconfident tourist, had a different plan. Brandon Carter, an American on his first trip to London, wasn't impressed. Brandon and his two best friends, Tyler and Josh, had spent the last few hours doing what every tourist does in London, eating fish and chips, taking selfies in a red phone booth, and, most importantly, drinking. A lot. Their pub crawl had started at noon, and by the time they stumbled toward Buckingham Palace, Brandon was feeling unstoppable. And then, as he leaned against the barricade, half-empty beer can in hand, he saw them. The royal guards, standing motionless, unblinking, and, to Brandon, completely ridiculous. Brandon let out a loud scoff, nudging Tyler. Dude, they're just standing there. How is that even a job? Tyler chuckled, already recording. Josh smirked. Bro, they're trained soldiers. You really want to mess with them? Brandon rolled his eyes. Come on, man. They're not superhumans. They're just guys in funny hats. And then, the idea hit him like a freight train of stupidity. I bet I can make one blink. Josh laughed. Wait, what? Brandon grinned. I'm going to have a staring contest with one, and I'm going to win. Before his friends could talk him out of it, Brandon stumbled forward, stopping just a few feet from one of the guards. The crowd noticed immediately. People started whispering, pulling out their phones. Some were shaking their heads. Others were smirking, waiting for the disaster to unfold. A British woman nearby muttered, "Oh, this is going to be good." A teenage boy leaned over to his dad. "That guy has no idea what he's getting into." Brandon? Brandon was too drunk to care. He planted his feet, squaring his shoulders. The royal guard stood tall, rifle in hand, eyes locked straight ahead. Brandon leaned in slightly, locking onto his cold, unwavering stare. All right, buddy. Let's see how tough you really are. Tyler and Josh burst out laughing, still filming. Bro, this is the dumbest thing you've ever done. Brandon didn't blink, didn't move, didn't break focus, and neither did the guard. 15 seconds in, Brandon was grinning. 30 seconds in, his eyes were starting to sting. 45 seconds in, his confidence wavered. A single bead of sweat rolled down his forehead. And the guard? Nothing. Not even a twitch. Not even the slightest hint of effort. And suddenly, Brandon realized something horrible. He wasn't breaking the guard. The guard was breaking him. Brandon shifted his weight. His grin faltered. Okay, man, I see you. I see you. You're good. But I'm better. The crowd laughed. But the guard? Still nothing. Brandon's eyes were burning now. He had to blink, but he refused to give up. His ego was on the line, and that's when he made his next mistake. He stepped closer. Too close. The air shifted instantly, and then the guard moved. Thump. A boot slammed into the pavement. The rifle snapped up slightly. And then, a voice like thunder erupted through the square. "Stand back!" The crowd gasped. Brandon? Brandon jumped back like he'd been hit by a truck. His soul left his body. The challenge was over. Because in a single second, with just one movement, one command, the guard had completely and utterly destroyed him. Brandon had thought this was a game. He had thought the guard was just a prop, an attraction, a statue in a hat. But now he was face to face with something far worse, because the guard was still watching him. And he was still coming forward. Brandon had lost the staring contest. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was, this wasn't over. Brandon's heartbeat pounded in his ears as he stumbled backward, his body acting before his brain could catch up. This wasn't what was supposed to happen. It was supposed to be a joke, a harmless little prank. But now the guard was moving. The crowd, which had previously been laughing and chatting, had fallen into a stunned silence. No one expected this. Not Brandon, not his friends, not even the tourists who had seen countless idiots mess with the royal guards before. This was different. This was serious. And the worst part? The guard still hadn't broken eye contact. Brandon was still staggering back, his drunken haze vanishing instantly, when the guard took one more step forward and let out a second, even louder command. "Stand back!" It wasn't just a warning. It was a military-grade order, cutting through the air like a gunshot. Every single hair on Brandon's arm stood on end. He wasn't facing a performer. He was facing a soldier. And in that moment, Brandon felt something he hadn't expected at all. Panic. The second the guard moved, the crowd lost their minds. Phones were whipped out instantly. Cameras zoomed in. Tourists were gasping, laughing, whispering, recording every second. A teenage boy pointed, "Dude, he messed up!" An older man chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, he's in trouble now." Even a little girl in pigtails looked up at her mother and asked, "Mommy, why is that man so scared?" The crowd erupted into laughter. And Brandon? Brandon was officially regretting every life choice that led him here. Brandon couldn't move. He was frozen, watching as the guard took another deliberate step forward, rifle shifting just slightly. His stance was terrifying. His posture was perfect. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't panicking. He was moving with the calm, calculated energy of someone who had done this before, many times. And suddenly, Brandon realized he wasn't the first idiot to try this, but he might be the first to regret it this much. Brandon's thoughts were spiraling. How did it escalate this fast? How was he already this deep in trouble? He needed to say something. Anything. Wait. Dude, chill. I was just joking." The guard didn't flinch, didn't acknowledge him at all. He was still marching forward, closing the distance. And that's when Brandon's survival instincts finally kicked in. He turned, and he ran. Not far, just a few steps back, retreating toward the barricades. The crowd lost it. Laughter, cheers, phones filming every second. Tyler and Josh? Still recording, still laughing. Josh wiped tears from his eyes. "Bro, you just ran away!" Tyler nearly dropped his phone. "You lost a staring contest to a soldier." Brandon's face burned. He had never been this embarrassed in his life. But before he could even catch his breath, a new problem appeared. The stomp of polished black boots filled the air. Not just one pair. Multiple. And that's when Brandon remembered something critical. This wasn't just about the Royal Guard. This was Buckingham Palace. This was one of the most heavily guarded places in London, and the Metropolitan Police were never far away. Brandon turned. And there they were. 2 uniformed officers walking toward him with a very clear sense of purpose. One of them was already clicking his radio. Brandon's stomach dropped. The crowd, still laughing, was now watching intently. Because this wasn't just funny anymore. This was about to get so much worse. Brandon's chest heaved as he backed away from the Royal Guard, his drunken confidence completely shattered. This was supposed to be a joke, a harmless little prank to get some laughs, maybe a few thousand likes online. But now he was being stared down by a real soldier, a man who had trained for years to defend one of the most secure locations in the world. And to make matters worse, the police were closing in fast. The sound of heavy police boots hitting the pavement sent a chill through Brandon's spine. 2 Metropolitan Police officers pushed through the crowd, their faces unreadable, their movements methodical and deliberate. One of them, a tall man with grizzled features, had a hand resting casually near his belt, right where his radio and cuffs were. Brandon swallowed hard. This was bad. Really bad. His legs twitched, ready to bolt. But he had nowhere to go. The barricades were behind him. The guard was in front of him. And the police? They were here to make sure this ended badly. The first officer stopped just a foot away, crossing his arms. "Sir, do you know where you are right now?" Brandon nodded quickly. "Yeah, Buckingham Palace. I know, but—" The officer cut him off immediately. "Then you should know that interfering with an active-duty soldier on official post is a serious offense." Brandon's stomach flipped. His friends, Tyler and Josh, were still recording, but now their laughter had faded into nervous chuckles. Josh muttered, "Bro, I think this is actually serious." Tyler, still filming, whispered, "Dude, do not get arrested in another country." But it was too late, because the second officer had already reached for his radio. "We have an individual interfering with royal security. Possible detainment required." Brandon's heart slammed against his ribs. Detainment? This was just supposed to be a joke. The crowd knew they were witnessing something legendary. Phones were still locked onto him, cameras flashing as people uploaded the video in real time. A woman in the crowd chuckled. "This guy just threw his whole vacation in the trash." Another man, watching with amusement, muttered, "He messed around, and now he's finding out." And then came the worst moment of all. A little kid, no older than 7, tugged on his mom's sleeve and asked, "Mommy, why is that man in trouble?" The crowd erupted with laughter. Brandon? Brandon wanted to evaporate into thin air. He threw up his hands, backing up toward the barricades. Okay, I get it, I'm done. It was just a joke, I swear." The first officer narrowed his eyes. "A joke? You crossed a restricted area and attempted to provoke a soldier on duty. Do you know how fast we could have you in cuffs?" Brandon's face drained of color. Handcuffs? He was just trying to go viral, not end up in a British jail. The officer leaned in slightly. "You're either incredibly stupid or incredibly lucky, because if he had reacted differently, you wouldn't be walking away right now." Brandon blinked rapidly. He looked over at the guard, still standing, still stone-faced, still unshaken. The guy hadn't even flinched. Brandon had tried to mock him, break him, win a staring contest. And in return, he had been completely erased. That, somehow, was worse than anything else. The second officer sighed, shaking his head. "Here's what's going to happen." Brandon held his breath. "You're going to turn around and walk out of this square, right now. And if I so much as see you within 500 feet of another guard today, you won't be walking away next time. Do you understand?" Brandon nodded so fast his neck nearly snapped. "Yes, totally, 100%. I'm gone, no problem." The officer jerked his head toward the exit. "Then get moving." Brandon turned and power-walked toward the exit, his face burning as the crowd laughed, cheered, and clapped. "Bye!" someone called. A tourist mockingly saluted him, saying, "Well fought, soldier." And the worst part? Tyler and Josh followed behind him, still filming. Tyler, between wheezes of laughter, muttered, "Bro, this is going to be everywhere." Brandon clenched his jaw. Oh, he knew. Because while he could leave this square, he would never leave the internet. And the worst was still to come. Brandon's feet moved fast, but his mind was moving even faster. How did this happen? 1 minute he was just joking around, trying to break a royal guard. The next, he was public enemy #1 in London, getting laughed out of Buckingham Palace. But the real nightmare was only beginning, because by the time he got back to his hotel, the internet had already gotten to work. Tyler and Josh had wasted zero time. By the time they reached their hotel room, the video was already uploaded. Brandon hesitated before opening TikTok, praying that it hadn't gotten much attention. Nope, it was already at 200,000 views, and climbing, fast. Brandon scrolled, his stomach twisting. The internet had no mercy. Bro challenged 400 years of British discipline and lost immediately. Brandon groaned, sinking into the hotel bed. This was bad. Really bad. And then, it got worse. Within hours, the internet was in full production mode. The clips had been edited, remixed, and turned into full-on viral content. Some of the worst ones? A dramatic black-and-white slow-motion clip of him backing away from the guard with the text, "The moment he knew, he messed up." A video of a gladiator battle, but with Brandon's face edited onto a warrior getting instantly defeated. A side-by-side of him stumbling backward while the guard stood completely still. Stealth, 0. Intelligence, 2. Survival instincts, 5. And then, the most brutal one of all. Brandon wanted to die for real. The next morning, Brandon woke up to the worst notification imaginable. A text from his mom. "Brandon, call me now. Why is your face all over the news?" His stomach dropped. He opened Google, hoping, praying, that it wasn't as bad as he thought. It was worse, because now, even major news outlets had covered the video. Headlines from hell. Tourist tries to stare down royal guard, regrets everything instantly. BBC News. Man tests British military discipline, fails spectacularly. The Guardian. This might be the fastest humiliation in Buckingham Palace history. LAD Bible. American tourist learns the hard way. The King's Guard never loses. BuzzFeed UK. And just when he thought things couldn't possibly get any worse, the talk shows started roasting him. Jimmy Fallon, grinning at the screen, played the clip for his audience. Ah yes, the classic challenge a literal soldier to a battle of discipline technique. Always ends well. The crowd roared with laughter. Stephen Colbert, shaking his head, added, "I love how the guard didn't even have to try. He just existed. And this guy lost." The audience lost it. And then came Trevor Noah's take. Imagine flying across the world just to take the fastest L in history. Brandon buried his face in his hands. There was no coming back from this. And then, the final betrayal. A new email notification popped up. Subject: Brandon, we need to talk. It was from his boss. His stomach flipped. Was he about to get fired because of a staring contest? He hesitated, then opened the email. "Hey, Brandon, I assume you've seen the video by now. Some of the clients have. Give me a call. We need to talk about this." Brandon wanted to jump out of the hotel window. This wasn't just an online joke anymore. This was real life. And the worst part? Even if the internet eventually moved on, his friends never would. And neither would the Royal Guard. Because while Brandon's life had just been ruined. The guard was already back at his post, still standing, still staring, still undefeated. Brandon sat in his hotel room, staring at his phone like it was a ticking time bomb. He had just gone from a regular tourist in London to the biggest joke on the internet, all because of a staring contest he never should have started. And now, he was about to pay for it forever. The original video had been bad enough, but now, it was at 20 million views, and climbing. Brandon's face had become the universal symbol for instant humiliation. Everywhere he looked, TikTok, Twitter, X, Instagram, YouTube, it was the same brutal cycle. His panicked stumble back, the booming "stand back" command, the unmoving guard standing victorious, and the internet tearing him apart. The comment section is unforgiving. Bro thought he was intimidating. Turns out he was the one who got intimidated. The only thing he protected was his ego, and he failed. Royal Guard, 1,000. Tourist, 0. Dignity, 1,000. Brandon scrolled, his soul slowly leaving his body. This was never going away. And just when he thought he'd hit rock bottom, his dad called. Brandon stared at the screen. Nope. No way. But the phone kept ringing. With a deep breath, he answered. "Hey, Dad." A long silence. Then, his father's voice, completely deadpan. "So, you went viral, huh?" Brandon winced. Yeah, kind of." His dad sighed. "Boy, I ain't flown across the ocean in my life, but even I know better than to mess with a damn British soldier." Brandon wanted to disappear, but his dad wasn't done. "Your uncle sent me the video. Your grandma saw it on Facebook. She called me asking if you'd been deported." Brandon face-palmed. "Grandma saw it?" "Oh yeah. And guess what? Your mom's church group saw it too." Brandon let out an actual whimper. This wasn't just internet humiliation. This was family humiliation. And that never fades. The email from his boss had been haunting him all morning. But now he had no choice but to deal with it. With shaky hands, he dialed. His boss picked up instantly. "Brandon." Silence. Brandon cleared his throat. "Hey, let me stop you right there." Brandon froze. "First off, let me just say, that was one of the funniest damn things I've ever seen." Brandon blinked. "Wait, what?" "I've watched it at least 10 times. My wife made me put it on the TV last night. My kids think you're famous." Brandon let out a long, shaky breath. "So, I'm not fired?" His boss chuckled. "Nah. But you are now officially Royal Guard guy in the office. Get used to it." Brandon groaned. This wasn't as bad as getting fired, but it was close. Across London, back at Buckingham Palace, the Royal Guard still stood in his perfect stance, still unmoved, still unshaken, still legendary. Because to him, this wasn't even a story worth remembering. It was just another tourist, another dumb mistake, another lesson learned the hard way. But for Brandon, this wasn't just a lesson. This was his legacy now. Because while the guard had already forgotten about him, the internet never would.